What I want to share with you this morning is just obviously some futuristic things when you talk about the future market hog. We'll talk a little bit about market weights. Both of the groups before me have talked a little bit about consumers. I want to talk about the changing consumer and how we go about producing the product that they want to buy. We'll talk about optimal carcass weights. Is something that Justin asked me to speak on in terms of what we think or what I think is the optimal pig, and then primal and meat quality from those animals. And then go through kind of a real quick other issues facing the industry that I think, as I was thinking about what to share, I think it's important that you understand kind of what's on the horizon, what we're seeing as some other issues. Before that, I do want to put out a disclaimer. Please do not tweet Smithfield said. All right? These are my thoughts, is what I see in the industry, not a Smithfield presentation. So please don't say that Smithfield said, because it will beat me back to Smithfield. All right? So we'll talk a little bit about market weights. What I hope through this presentation is we can obviously have some discussion, but what I really want you to do is I hope I stimulate some thought and think about some things differently than what we do or have been up until this point. So if we think about market weight, I want to take this, what's achievable? What can we do as an industry, and where's this thing going to go? If you think back, and we'll show some data, you think back in the early 2000s, people said we'd never get past 240. That was the end where we were going to stay with market weights on hogs. Today we're somewhere in the 280s. So the question is, where can we go? And I would challenge you that there's really no stopping. Right? There's no reason why we can't have a 1,000-pound market hog. Now, it's not going to happen, obviously, in the next few years. I certainly won't see it in my history. Many of you probably won't either, but I think it could happen. There's nothing to stop it from happening. We can figure out from the genetic basis, we can figure out how to process it, figure out how to market it. I don't think there's anything stopping weights. Again, just something to throw out for thought. Maybe a little bit controversial, certainly an interesting picture, but I don't think there's anything stopping us. If you look at just true data and look in the near term of what has happened and where we're going, this would be from 2001 to date, and you can see the increase in weights. We're running about 1.5 pounds annually increase in weight. I don't see anything that's going to stop that either. I think we'll continue on that trajectory. You see some things in 2014, 2015. Everybody, I think, understands why that occurred with the weight increase, people holding on to hogs. So we have a little bit of anomaly there, but trajectory of 1.5 pounds annually. So that puts us, if we go take that and extrapolate it out, and I think this is very realistic, by 2030, 2025, 2030, we'll have an average market hog of about 300 pounds live. As we'll talk in the subsequent slides about composition of that animal, I think it's very important that we stay ahead of the composition of this animal, particularly as we move to these heavier weights, and not let it get out of control in terms of fat to lean ratios. But we'll talk through that. So the second big topic I want to get you to think about is the changing consumer and how we meet what the consumer wants. And Stephen talked a little bit about pork consumption. We've got a huge task ahead of us in being able to get all of this pork, find all of this pork a home that's coming in the near term. So we have to listen to what the consumers are saying and react accordingly. One thing I would challenge is that we need to think differently about the ultimate goal of hog production. I think up until this point, by and large, we've thought about raising pigs and raising market hogs. I think we need to transition from that and think more about producing an eating experience. And everybody in the supply chain has a hand in that, in making sure the eating experience is pleasurable and the consumer comes back and buys that product subsequently. So I would challenge the ultimate goal of hog production, quite frankly, has to be how do we provide a pleasurable eating experience that brings consumers back time and time. So how do we do that? I mean, there's been a lot done in the industry to understand or improve pork quality and meet that eating experience. Tremendous, from genetics to nutrition to animal handling to changes in our animal handling at the plant, both at the farm and at the plant, CO2 stunning, blast chilling. All of this has led to a better eating experience, but we still have a challenge in front of us, as I'll show in some subsequent data, to make sure that we're providing what the consumers need and will actually buy. The big change is millennials, and I think a lot of you have certainly heard this in other talks. I think this is a really great slide to transition into what I want to talk about in terms of the millennials want their pork to be pork. And what we're seeing is retailers are moving away from enhanced pork. All right, so as we move away from enhanced pork, how do we get that same eating experience from basically the same product? Right? So if we take injection out, how are we going to maintain tenderness, flavor that was talked about, and then repeat buying habits? So we talk, and I don't want to get too much into the meat science of this thing, but I want to lead to where I think the pig needs to go to make this all happen. For years, we've talked about pH as the best predictor of meat quality. And I'm sure most of you have seen this chart in some form or fashion along the way. What I would challenge is that as we've taken out the stress gene, and I say the stress gene because I do believe there are others that are affecting our market animals. But as we take out the halothane gene, we take out the napole gene, we've improved our antemortem handling. As I said, we've added CO2 stunning, we've added blast chilling. I would argue that pH doesn't explain meat quality the way we need it to, and the way we need to be able to get to a finished product. So if we don't use pH, then the question is, what do you use? Today, I would say, quite frankly, subjective and objective color and marbling scores are really all we have. And then obviously, if the end goal, I think if to get to the end goal, you have to measure those traits that have end goal importance. Certainly tenderness is the key driver here as we look at moving pickle formulas or enhancement formulas, and particularly pork loins. So Stephen showed this from the AMS perspective and going through the new pork quality standards. I just wanted to throw up some data to show kind of that same thing. If you think about where we need to go as an industry, I think that's the exact platform. I think that the basis or the foundation of that grading program is spot on for getting consumers to eat more pork. Ideal color range being in the 3 to 5. 5 is probably a little too extreme for most consumers for pork. It's more of a beef type color score. But I think certainly 3 to 4 is the ideal color range. So where does that put the industry? Where do we stand in terms of the percentage of product that would fall in that category? So if you take on the y-axis, you have the frequency. And then on the bottom would be the color score, subjective color score, and then the corresponding Minolta color score that would go with that. We've got a huge opportunity to improve color. We've got 80% of the product that would not meet a premium type program. All right, so whether it's genetics, nutrition, animal handling, you name it, there's a lot of opportunity here to bring this up. Probably, quite frankly, genetics is a great start on this piece right here. From a marbling, again, they show 3 to 10. I think 3 to 4, if you look at the data, consumers with a raw meat product, consumers won't pick up heavily marbled product. When they eat it, they love it. So the question is, how do we educate the consumers to pick up these 3s and 4s? Because that's where the data shows the most value is in terms of tenderness. Education-wise, I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you get them other than just repeat experiences. I think these will be heavy pork users, and these grading techniques will not really spur any more pork consumption than where we're at today. But the heavy end users will respond to these types of scenarios. Where does the industry stand on marbling? Again, if you have the frequency, about 70% of the product wouldn't qualify in terms of marbling. All right, so again, another huge opportunity to be able to get this eating experience presented to these customers. The other thing I'll point out on here is if you look at the percent of 4, 5s, and 6s, I think that needs to shift back over as well, and we need to be in that 3 to 4% marbling range versus this wide range of distribution, because there's really the value lost in the plant side of these really super fat pigs is not going to be advantageous. Lastly here, tenderness. We talk about really the end point of consumers coming back and making repeat decisions. This is a great story for the industry. If you look from 2001, all the way up to 17, real big jump from 1 to 12, and then we've plateaued. So again, another huge opportunity to improve the overall eating experience for consumers. So if we think about the ideal market hog, again, just my opinion. So please don't tweet this. I think the target live weight for where we're at today or for the next 3 to 4 years is about a 292-pound live animal. The problem around that is going to be the standard deviation of what we see coming in. And the better the industry can do to tighten that deviation is going to be very, very helpful to these finished products that we'll talk about. That puts about a 222-pound carcass. And then, as I said, we've got to put some fat into these pigs to be able to get the eating experience on the backside. But as we move these weights up, we have to be ultra cautious that we don't start putting just fat on these pigs. We need the lean to come with it. Ideally, stay compositionally sound with where we're at today, but driving marbling into the finished product. If we look at the breakdown of the primals, and I think this is where it becomes important as we move these weights up, is we're somewhat constrained today by sizes. So if you think about hams, anything over a 27-pound ham has to be boned because it doesn't fit into a spiral or an easy carb. So you have to think about the value and where you're driving from there. Loin's the other one. 24 pounds and up, you bone. All right, people don't want a 125-pound case of bone-in pork loins to have to try to throw around in the back of the store. But we need those cells. So how do you balance, the bone-in versus the boneless pieces? The other big one is bellies. Really over 18 pounds is where you start to see a decline in USDA prices. So you have a window of where you can cut down those bellies, but you change the structure, the format of the fat and lean so much that as we get bigger and bigger, what do we do with those bellies? So the optimal today is about an 18-pound belly on these pigs, and that's where it'd fall into this 292. From a meat quality perspective, we've already talked about, so I won't belabor, but really what we talked about, the 3 to 5 visual color scores, the marbling being in the product, but not excessive, except for your high end if somebody wants a super premium pork chop. Tenderness we talked about, less than 7 pounds, and then I throw up iodine value up here, and some of it may resonate with some of you, and it may not with others, but it's a measure of carcass fat quality. And what we're seeing is more and more alternative feedstuffs are being inserted into these rations. We are seeing fat quality concerns or softness in fat, which impacts bacon shelf life, and then smear and grinds, soft fat in terms of being able to trim a nice fat cover off of pork loin or on a boneless ham muscle. Our ideal target would be 74 to 78. There's really nothing magical about that number. What we know is if you go lower, you get a really hard fat that's not advantageous. If we get over 80, things start to be a disaster. So kind of a 74 to 78 range is where I think as we're formulating diets and looking forward, we need to stay in that range. All right, so we'll try to wrap up here with some other issues that they're facing the industry, and there's probably not new to anyone, but I think it's important to point out challenges that we are facing. A big one's these animal activist groups. Social media, as you're well aware, as they've talked, I still can't get around 300 hours of YouTube video uploaded every minute. I mean, that's just mind-boggling to think. I can't even get my mind wrapped around that. But social media has given a great platform for people to tell our story, right? We've got to be, in my opinion, we have to be very transparent and open and tell our story, not letting them tell our story for us. I have this blank pig save. If you follow it, there's a Toronto pig save, a Smithfield pig save, you name a town, they have a pig save if there's a pig plant or a hog production operation. These guys are very clever. It's a very interesting group. They set at a stop sign, wait for a truck to come up, and then they put water in to give the pigs through water bottles. They've gone to the point now of laying down in front of trucks on the highway. So a very brazen group of individuals that are out trying to stand in the way of what we're trying to accomplish and telling our story for us. The other one that's very interesting is this direct action anywhere. They are undercover at night going into facilities. Part of the issue with this is the biosecurity concerns as they go from site to site to site to site. It's been interesting as we've tracked some of these to find where they've been and how some diseases have migrated. They put their videos online, so if you want to see them, they actually go in, you see their faces, they talk about animal agriculture, telling our story. Then they take a pig or a chicken back to their sanctuary and then show how much better the pig's doing in their care or the chicken's doing in their care than what we're doing. So again, social media just allowing this to happen. I just say that we're the better ones to tell our story than what they are to tell our story for us. Group housing, has been certainly a big topic in the industry. That has moved now and moving towards castration. And I want to show, the reason why this slide is blank is I want to preface this next slide and say that it is a very graphic slide, but I felt it was important that you see what's going on in the European Union as they make their transition away from castration without pain mitigation. So I won't leave it up very long, but if you're highly offended, I apologize up front. So close your eyes, I'll tell you when you can open them and we'll move on. So this is actually on a billboard in the European Union. It's actually online as well to get the translated version, but it says, "Put yourself in a pig's place. Stop an aesthetic piglet castration with us. Animals suffer like we do." That's coming here too. I'll take it off. That's coming here too. And we're being forced, I shouldn't say forced, we are having to find alternative ways to deal with castration of animals. Pain mitigation is clearly the easiest to think about, right? If there was a food grade lidocaine approved, it'd be the simplest way to correct this issue. Unfortunately, there's not. There's a lot of testing being done to identify these alternatives for pain mitigation. Anesthesia is certainly an option, but Roger's back here. We anesthetized a bunch of pigs back in 2002. It's a lot of work, and to get the people involved to do it. So I don't think that's the option either. We could certainly follow the Australian model and grow pigs at lighter weights, but as we talked, the industry I think needs to evolve into these heavier pig weights. There's a talk today, so I'll tee this up for the semen sexing technology guys. Certainly a great opportunity. I worry on that about how the consumer perceives that. Is that going to be something viewed as we're playing God as we think about trying to make all gilts? And then if we make all gilts, how do we get all those gilts to perform to the level of the barrows that we need from a meat quality perspective? And then lastly, the temporary castration technologies. Certainly, again, as you think of the consumer public, how are they going to perceive these issues? I'd just say whatever we do, whatever we as an industry we pick as to be what that next alternative is we've got to be upfront about it and transparent so that we don't have lingering issues going forward. The last thing, I'd be remiss if I talk about the future and don't talk about the new packing capacity that's coming on. Two of these facilities, being the Sioux City, Iowa, and the Coldwater, Michigan plant, are now online. They're doing about 5,000 to 6,000 pigs a day, from what I understand. And then the Prestige plant that's listed there at the bottom will be coming online here late, probably a year from now, if everything goes well. There's no doubt in my mind the industry can produce more hogs and do it effectively. The biggest questions I have and what these guys are seeing today is where are we going to get the labor to run these plants and where are we going to go with the meat? The first one, I think hopefully the government can help somewhat in being able to find these workers. The second one, people have got to consume more pork, and if we don't do the first part that we talked about of making a pleasurable eating experience or repeat eating experience, I don't think that domestically we'll be able to improve that consumption. If we can't export it because of other free trade agreements being wiped away, where do we go with this pork? So, it's a great time. It's an opportunistic time for producers. The question, again, is who's going to eat it, where's it going to go, and do prices go up or go down?